Hey, what's up? It's Two. Been working on some big videos lately, so apologies for the interruption in the FGO videos for the channel, but while I'm waiting for my editor to take care of some IRL stuff, I'm going to try to bang out some servant how-tos in the meantime. The last Patreon vote was for one of the old men in the assassin class, so here's a how-to on everyone's favorite halal enforcer, King Hassan. King Hassan is a limited 5-star assassin whose claim to fame, other than being one of the biggest gigachads in the game, is being the only assassin with the full berserker deck, even on the JP server to this day. This, combined with his skills and single target MP, make him an absolute unit, in case his art didn't already portray that adequately, who can annihilate rider bosses with relative ease. While for a time Assassin Kama did steal that role away from him because of Scotty, she's since had to give some of it back ever since Koyanskaya showed up, so now the old man's back in the game and wants to decapitate some riders more than ever. At level 90, he's got 13,338 HP and 11,848 attack with 1% MP charge on attack. He's lawful evil, his notable trait is Brynhilda's Beloved, and he's got a triple buster deck with a 5-hit quick, 3-hit arts, 1-hit busters, and a 6-hit extra. His buffed first skill gives him a stack of guts for one time that revives him with 3,000 to 5,000 HP and lasts for 5 turns. In addition, it now gives him a unique Abyss of Death buff, also for 5 turns, that increases his buster performance by 20 to 30% so long as he has his guts buff. When his guts activates to revive him after a fatal hit, he'll get rid of his Abyss of Death buff, charge his own MP gauge by 20%, and increase his buster performance by 50% for 1 turn, all on a 9 to 7 turn cooldown. Keep in mind that when his guts activates, the 50% buster buff is not stacking with the previous 20 to 30% because it's tied to the Abyss of Death buff, and triggering his guts removes it. His second skill increases his debuff resist by 50 to 100% and his attack by 10 to 20% for 3 turns, increases his defense by 20 to 40% for 1 turn, and heals him for 1,000 to 2,500 HP on a 7 to 5 turn cooldown. His buffed third skill reduces all enemies insta-kill resist by 100 to 200% and increases his buster performance by 30 to 50% both for 3 turns, and charges his MP gauge by 20 to 30% on an 8 to 6 turn CD. His passives increase his debuff resist by 17.5%, his star gem by 10%, his crit damage by 8%, and charm debuff resist by 100%. He is also immune to insta-kill, which is kind of funny since his actual death rate is very high at almost 50%, and he has a 5% chance to insta-kill enemies outright just by normal attacking them, both of which are unique to him. His A3 gives him bonus damage against sabers. And his Noble Phantasm is a single target buster that deals 600 to 1000% damage and has a 100 to 200% chance to insta-kill them. This NP is also the only NP in the game that will completely skip an enemy's death animation if it kills its target, either from regular damage or from insta-kill. Originally, it was a bug, but players thought it was cool, so the devs made it a feature. King Hassan basically eats single target rider bosses for breakfast if that gives you an idea of how good he is at killing them. Matter of fact, as long as he's not getting counterclassed, obviously, he's just good at single target boss fights in general. This is mainly thanks to all of the offensive power he packs when he's swinging around that giant ass sword of his. Full berserker deck, single target buster MP, attack buff on his S2, mana burst on his S3, and his 2 skill buffs not only gave his mana burst a 3-turn duration now, which is wild, but it even gave his guts its own buster buff. If you think about it, King Hassan is just a walking berserk reference, huh? Especially with the skill buffs, it's almost as if you're playing him wrong if you ever touch his quick or arts cards. That's how much damage potential he has. I'd go so far as to say that he even deals mental damage to you whenever you play him by destroying your ability to comprehend quick or arts teams. Some of y'all meme about, seeing buster cards and going, haha, funny red cards go burr, but for King Hassan, it's not a meme, it's a whole ass lifestyle. But I do say almost because while the Unga Bunga Buster agenda is great and all, you do need to remember to use your brain at least half the time with him. His power is a double-edged sword, no pun intended, and because he's built so different, he's a very atypical assassin and lacks the normal capabilities that assassins as a class are known for, the main thing being, generating crit stars. Remember, he only has 1 quick card, and none of his skills generate stars or even give him any extra star gen. His presence concealment passive gives him some, but that's pretty much it. And his buster cards, including his NP, only have 1 hit on them, so even if he did have have some star gen buffs, he's still not making a lot of stars anyway. This is why when Kama came out, she became the new go-to Rider killer, because just like King Hassan, she's also a fellow 5-star assassin and thus has 5-star stats. But unlike him, she also has strong star gen to help her potentially maintain crazy damage output for the next turn or two after she MPs. The fact that you could pair her with Scotty, obviously, to crit enemies into oblivion cemented that fact until Koyenskaya showed up. The full Buster deck also doesn't do King Hassan's MP gen any favors either. While he's got a very high MP charge stat to make up for it, only having one arts card gives him very limited options to charge his MP and makes pairing him with other arts servants awkward due to the relative lack of arts chains. If he does manage to get an arts card with a high crit chance on it, then that'll give him a fat stack of MP gauge, obviously. It's just good luck trying to get that arts card a lot of crit stars, especially given that he only has one quick card and he doesn't have a star weight buff, at least not yet. And of course, don't forget the arbitrary 10% damage reduction that all assassins have as a class, so while King Hassan does hit way harder than what you're used to seeing out of most assassins, it might not be as high as what you might expect if you're used to playing other classes. But what he has gotten in the form of buffs and the addition of Koyenskaya go a long way to addressing these weaknesses. The mana burst duration from 1 to 3 turns is excellent, of course, but the fact that he now has a 30% charge means that you can run him with 50% charge CEs with a maxed A2 for those level 90 plus event nodes that may have single target Rider or Berserker enemies. And don't forget that his Berserker deck also means that face carding is a lot easier for finishing enemies off. His buffed Guts turns his main defensive mechanic into an offensive one as well, and Koyenskaya expands his capabilities immensely with her own skill cooldown reductions, 50% battery, and even more Buster buffs, Buster star weight, and star bombs. Coincidentally, since Koyenskaya is an assassin and not a caster, she's actually perfectly suited to being King Hassan's main support, since she'll also resist Rider enemies thanks to, counterclass. So no more having to rely on Merlin and wondering if a Rider boss is going to hit him with a random crit for 2/3 of his health. To be fair, Koyenskaya's skills are not a long-term answer to King Hassan's drawbacks. After all, once her skills effects are gone, you gotta wait a while for them to come back. Like, this ain't Tamamo Arts bullshit where you get your skills back way faster than you should. But with all the raw Buster damage that King Hassan does have, oftentimes it's more than enough to finish some fights with their support, or at least get through most of them so that the team can easily mop up the rest. All he really needs now is an MP damage buff, since he still doesn't have one for some reason. I'm guessing Lozangle doesn't want to give him that though, since they're scared to give Wodan too much power, otherwise his level 120 King Hassan is going to get so strong he's going to decapitate the entire Nasuverse, and we can't have that until Nasu at least finishes Suki Remake Farside. Also, since I don't know where else to talk about his insta-kill mechanic, I will now, in case anyone watching this doesn't already know how ass insta-kill is in this game. Generally speaking, do not rely on his normal attack insta-kills, since in practice you'll rarely see it happen. It's just meant to be one of those like, whoa, King Hassan just insta-killed someone moments. However, it can come in clutch in case you need him to insta-kill like a high HP mob in a farming node somewhere that isn't a boss or a servant or whatever, and your King Hassan isn't quite strong enough or isn't high enough MP level to one-shot it with damage alone. So his insta-kill can still be useful, it's just very situational like it is for anyone else in the game who has a viable insta-kill in some way. His max bond CE gives him an additional 100% debuff resist while he has it equipped. Unfortunately, this is an almost entirely useless effect on him, and if you're wondering why I haven't mentioned his really good debuff resist effect so far, I've actually been saving it for this section. The reason why this extra debuff resist from his bond CE is pointless is because he already has one on his second skill that lasts for 3 turns. Remember that most debuffs in FGO only have a base 100% chance of landing, and honestly, debuff success buffs are pretty rare. Off the top of my head, I can only think of like Caster Gilgamesh or maybe Caster Gilderay who have them. Now, there are some debuffs that have specifically 500% chance to land, but against those, it's not like having that extra 100% debuff resist from his because max bond CE is really gonna help. Only straight up debuff immunity or debuff cleanse will. On top of that, nowadays you can easily give your King Hassan a support coin Skya, and assuming that your King Hassan is Lord, he can basically keep his second skill continuously active and thus maintain 100% debuff resist plus his magic resist passive active the entire time, and even longer if you bring 2 coins and stagger their batteries a bit. Essentially, King Hassan has incredible debuff resist potential with Koyan Skya support, and it's good enough on its own to deal with most debuffs to the point where having more debuff resist is more or less useless. Speaking of CEs, as I mentioned earlier, you can run him with 50% starting charge CEs now thanks to his new 30% battery. Not sure if NA has it yet, but if not, soon. So HND, Aerial Drive, First Sunrise, Starry Nights, etc. Golden Sumo would actually be quite good on him since with Koyan support, he's gonna have plenty of buster buffs, but not a lot of attack buffs, so Golden Sumo can help with that. Star Weight buff or crit damage CEs are also great if you prefer watching KH crit bitches out of existence like Hot Sands or Victor. Just keep in mind that what you give him in terms of CEs will heavily dictate how exactly you want to play him. So for example, if you give him CEs that buff MP damage, go for his arts card whenever it shows up to use his MP more often. If you give him crit CEs, make sure to run him with supports that can give him a steady supply of stars, like Koyan Skya with 2030 or something. If you like the freedom of playing King Hassan as whatever, then just the standard attack or buster CEs are the safe bet. In summary, King Hassan is the most Giga Chad assassin in the game who eats, sleeps, and breathes buster and busts people's heads in as his entire playstyle. If he sees red, you're dead. He doesn't give a shit about your silly little debuffs. If you manage to kill him, he'll just come back even more pissed off and with a bigger buster buff than before, and Allah help you if you're a writer and Wodan is about to make another YouTube video out of you. Just don't rely on his insta-kill though, since according to La Zangle, the insta-kill mechanic in FGO is halal for enemies but haram for you. I've got a Patreon where you can vote for the next servant video. The poll for the next one should be up by the time you see this video. Like and subscribe for more. I've returned to dual streaming to both YouTube and Twitch recently, so make sure to check out the stream on either platform, and thanks for watching.